Welcome to the Hall of Innovators vodcast, hosted by George Davison. In this episode, George talks with Wes Wheeler, Chief Executive Officer and Director at LabConnect, a global central laboratory solutions partner connecting the clinical research industry with technology-driven support services.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tomorrow's World Today. And today we have Wes Wheeler with us. He is from a company called LabConnect. Welcome.
It's great to be here. Thanks very much.
So, Wes, I was hoping you'd share with our audience today a little bit about your experience with this organization. Can you walk us back and tell us about LabConnect?
Well, the company was founded about 20 years ago by a couple of entrepreneurs that decided that there was a niche in the market for small pharmaceutical companies that really didn't have expertise in laboratory work. And so they decided to start this company pretty much like this typical story out of the back of a garage.
Yes.
Found a lab in Johnson City, Tennessee that was willing to do clinical trial work out of their laboratory and focus on small biotech startup pharmaceutical companies that really needed expertise. Over time, they got to the point where they could do more than that, so they started to reach out to larger companies, and now, of course, we're seeking to really globalize the company and digitize the company, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's a great entry point right there. So as we start to expand our wings, so to speak, can you walk us through how you're planning on doing some of that?
Yeah, I think first to talk about what the company actually does. The currency of clinical trials is blood. Moving blood from patients around the world that are recruited for clinical trials, as well as other types of substance like urine, of course. But blood is the main currency of clinical trials. So what we do is we collect blood samples from patients around the world that are involved in clinical trials, and we move those samples to a laboratory. We collect the testing data, and then we turn the testing data into real data that can be used to file for new drugs. So that's what we do. What we're doing now is moving into more late phase clinical trials, so we can do more than just phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 being healthy volunteers of maybe 10 to 20 healthy volunteers, to phase 2, which is more like 100 or so patients, to phase 3 trials that are thousands, so that we can do more volume for more trials, for more companies in more countries around the world.
So if you were to walk us through, maybe the audience needs to understand a little more about, doing these trials. Ultimately, what are we looking for these trials to tell us for the audience market out there? I mean, you're doing all this work, blood work, testing work, etc. What are you looking for in order to get clarity to the pharmaceutical industry?
We're a very highly regulated industry. The FDA in the U.S., of course, and the EMA in Europe, and many, many other regulatory bodies around the world, very heavily regulated. You cannot get a drug approved anywhere in the world without having gone through a very rigorous series of tests. We call them clinical trials, and clinical trials go through phases. From preclinical, when we're testing in animals, and perhaps digital twins, to phase 1, healthy volunteers, to patients in phase 3. And you have to prove that, first of all, the drug is safe. So the safety is done both in the animal phase and in the first phase, when healthy volunteers volunteer to have the drug put into their body, and then we test. We test for safety. After safety is confirmed, we bring real patients in that have real disease, and they're tested with the same drug, but at different doses, to make sure that we get the right combination of dosage and what we call efficacy, which is how the drug works in the disease. And so until you have safety and efficacy, you don't have any data to file. We produce about 80% of the data required to make a filing. So that's what we do. We work for pharmaceutical companies and clinical research companies that need us to protect the trial integrity, but also to bring the testing results and the data.
I see. So because it's third party and not connected to the pharmaceutical company itself, right, it's more bankable, so to speak.
We think so. We are a very unique central laboratory company. We have some competition, of course, we all do. We think we're unique in that we are agnostic when it comes to the laboratories we use. So we don't own the labs. We actually broker and contract with the labs anywhere in the world to do the required testing for these clinical trials. Many companies have their own labs, which means they have the maintenance aspects, they have labor, they have capital requirements to keep those laboratories operating. We don't have to do that.
Yes.
We are agnostic when it comes to labs.
So that makes sense. So as an entrepreneurial company trying to grow, making labs all over the entire world would be quite a capital expense.
Right.
So how are you getting and collecting all this data? From what I've been hearing, there's something that's connecting all these labs together. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, let me talk about the digitizing in a minute.
Okay.
I think it's important to know that the drugs that are being developed today are becoming more complicated. More than 50% of all trials today are in oncology, so cancer. The cancer trials that we're doing now are requiring more and more specialty testing. We're looking for biomarkers in patients that indicate the kind of cancer they have, the kind of receptor we're trying to hit with the drug. Mm-hmm. And so because of that complexity, we're having to find more and more specialty labs around the world that can do these specialized assays. So testing certain biomarkers, certain types of cells in the body to try to find the right balance of testing around the world to get the data we need for our clients.
Can you talk a little bit about bumps in the road you've hit trying to do this?
Yeah, because we don't own the labs, we have to develop a relationship with the labs. So we have to develop, first of all, find the right ones. And I'll back up and just say one of the objectives we have to globalize the company is to find partner labs in 7 regions of the world. And the 7 regions are decided by where we believe the patients are coming from. So the U.S. is obvious. Europe is obvious. Beyond Europe and the U.S., we're going to China, we're going to Australia, we're going to South Korea, and we're going to Latin America. And so we pick a lab that represents those regions, and then we have to develop a relationship with them, develop a contract with them, and actually build a facility of our own next to them so that we can actually manage the movement of samples and the data in and out while the testing is being done by our third parties. The bumps in the road are the digitizing of the company to make sure that all the data can come into one platform. All those labs are operating in a different system.
Yes.
We have our own system. They have their own system. So finding a way to connect all these labs to our system is the challenge. We've hired recently a new chief commercial officer as well as chief technical officer to make that happen. So we're now in the process of digitizing all of our systems and connecting our systems to their systems so that we can bring all the data back in a consistent format.
Sounds pretty efficient once you get through these initial stages. So as you're scaling, you're probably able to do this at a better margin than...
That's the point. Scalability is the point. It's the whole point. We have been more or less a family-run type of company until now. We've decided as a new CEO coming in to invest in technology. So we have invested in a new, what we call a laboratory information system that's across the globe. We have a new enterprise resource system, which is like SAP, for example.
Right.
We are developing a new sample tracking system, a new proposal system, project management system, and others that are all going to be digitally connected so that we can easily add a site to our network and we can have them all digitally connected.
And so there's some new technology that's being developed around this digitization, isn't there?
Yeah, I think you could imagine that we're dealing with Australia, China, Latin America, all the European countries, and even now we're considering Middle East and Africa. Patients are more and more coming from these remote locations. So finding the labs that are local, because the blood has to get to the lab within 48 hours maximum. If it goes beyond 48 hours, it becomes unusable. We call it, it tests out at that point. So we have to find labs that are local, that are compliant. They have to be compliant. They have to be operating under what we call good clinical practice by the FDA. And then they have to have systems that can integrate with us. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes we have to take a flat file, from a remote lab somewhere in the world and convert that flat file into our file. So the challenges we have really are finding the labs that work, that are regulated and that are compliant, but also that they have systems that can be integrated into our system. And without that, we don't have the data that we need.
I see. So you've developed a new system that's connecting these labs together. You're getting better scale from that, I imagine.
We're having fun with Kaizen events. So we're bringing the teams together. In fact, we have one coming up next week where we can bring 25 people together and we don't leave the room until we fix the process. So we're mapping the entire process from beginning to end, and we're identifying along the way where each of the digital systems have to integrate. So we're finding ways where we have to connect systems to systems within our company and also systems from outside the company into our. So the challenge is really process design, integration of all the digital inputs, and then getting a final output that's usable for the FDA for filing.
And the invention of a better system like this, what's that going to do for the customers of the world out there? The pharmaceutical customers, but ultimately the consumer.
Well, we're inventing new medicine. And we're a big part of the creation of new medicines, and we're very proud of that. We're very involved with cancer. Very much so. We are doing a lot of complicated studies now that are curing all the different forms of cancer that you see and hear about, and some you don't know about yet. And we're working on 380 trials right now. I would say probably more than half of those are cancer related. Wow. And so, being part of a company that's helping to develop new medicine is an important thing to do.
Very much so. It's easier to do the work when there's a noble cause attached to it. So,
of course.
So ultimately, if I was to ask you to project into the future for us, what do you see in the future in tomorrow's world with the technology you're working on?
It's interesting that AI is taking a big place in pharmaceuticals finally. I think we've been talking about AI for a while in the world. It's just been pretty recently that the pharmaceutical industry has started to adopt AI. So one example would be, instead of using animals in preclinical trials for testing safety of drugs, there are companies that are experimenting with using AI to simulate using a digital twin, which is simulating how a patient might react to a drug, instead of putting that drug into an animal. That's just one example. We're using AI for mining our data to see if we can find pockets of populations of patients that we can recruit, finding better ways to align the data together, finding different ways to interpret a clinical protocol and turn that into a testing regime. And so we'll be doing a lot of work with AI going forward. I think that's one of the future issues. I think the other is that we haven't talked about cell and gene therapies. We're actually modifying people's cells. We're not talking about radiopharma, where you're attaching an isotope that can kill a cell to a delivery mechanism that gets that isotope to your cancer tumor. There's a lot of that going on now, and in terms of trying to kill cancer cells without harming the individual. And you'll see more of that with what we call conjugate antibodies, CDCs we call them, and also with radiopharma. You'll hear more about that in the future. But more drugs targeted to very specific parts of your body.
Well, we've come a long way from the early days of alchemy and, running these crazy little experiments in dark rooms and trying it out on people, haven't we?
We have. We've come a long, long way. In a very short time, I will say.
Yeah.
But medical technology is remarkable, and we're very proud to be part of it.
Well, good work. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about, how you established yourself in the industry. I mean, you didn't start the company, but you're the CEO of it today. Can you walk us through a little bit of your history? I mean, of course, the young people in the world, they look at us and say, I don't understand how you get where you are. But at one time, you were back in school, and so was I. So, might be nice to share with the audience a little bit of that.
Okay.
Where are you from?
I'm an engineer. I was born in New York. I went to school in Massachusetts for engineering, mechanical engineering. My goal was to build power plants for a living. That was my goal. I thought that I would be at a designer's desk designing power plants. I thought that was my my objective in life, I got recruited instead to work for Exxon when I was very young. And I spent 12 years working around the world for Exxon building refineries instead of power plants. And so after that, I got a call from nowhere to join a company called Glaxo, which is now called GlaxoSmithKline. Mm-hmm. They're probably the number 6 or 7 pharmaceutical company in the world. Back then, they were very small.
Yes.
I was recruited to come over to build their research campus in North Carolina. And that's how I got to North Carolina, where I live now. And after 13 years of merging Glaxo with Glaxo Wellcome, GlaxoSmithKline, and merging all the manufacturing facilities around the world, that was my main job. I was put into marketing for a short time after I got my MBA. And that, I never looked back. When I went to marketing, I've been a marketing commercial guy since then. And Since then, I've run 5 companies for various, all in pharmaceuticals, from Glaxo to Patheon to DSM Pharmaceuticals to a company called Marken, which is now owned by UPS Healthcare. I built the UPS Healthcare division during COVID and got involved in Operation Warp Speed. Was very much involved with the U.S. government during COVID, moving vaccines around the world. And then I retired and thought I was retired, joined 5 boards, and then I got a call from the board of LabConnect to be their CEO. I hadn't planned on coming back full-time, but I am here again in the chair and very much enjoying it.
Well, good. That's a nice background on where you came from. If I was to ask you, if you were back in, let's say, high school or middle school, did you have any mentors that kind of got you onto this path of life?
Yeah, we all have mentors. I had a great one in college. What I learned from him most, my mechanical engineering professor, is that every complicated problem can be boiled down to one simple place. And it was the law of thermodynamics. And the basic law of thermodynamics, I never forgot the fact that everything we did in mechanical engineering when I was studying fluids and heat transfer is it can come back to one simple equation, the first law of thermodynamics. I never forgot that because as an engineer, and my team will tell you this, when they give me a problem, my first reaction is to solve it.
Yes.
And I usually try to solve it in simple terms. So that's one.
Thank goodness.
I also had a mentor during all my years at Glaxo who I very much respect. He's a very good friend of mine. I've worked with him for 17 years, and he was a military guy. Mm-hmm. And so the combination of engineering and military and the precision that he demanded of me made me, I think, pretty much who I am today.
That's wonderful. So there are mentors out there in the world. It's nice when you bump into them and they help you. Sometimes they don't even know how they're moving us forward with our careers, do they? They just want to help.
Things happen. I never expected to be doing what I'm doing today. Again, right. I could easily be designing power plants right now.
Right. So if you could connect the dots. So because our audience doesn't get to see people on screen very often that have been through the process of working their way up to a CEO and then seeing that happen again and again. It might be a little confusing. So how did you put your name out there that you were looking for a CEO position? Did they seek you? How do you get attracted into the CEO role?
I think it has a lot to do with networks. It's not really. It's really difficult to put your name out there and say, "Hey, I'm available to be a CEO." The first call I got was when I was still at Glaxo Wellcome, or GlaxoSmithKline, as it turns out, where it was a plant that was actually was operated once upon a time by Glaxo, was acquired by 3 companies since then, and they had a big problem with the FDA. The FDA had shut them down, and they were looking for someone to fix it. And I had a reputation for fixing a lot of the manufacturing operations at GSK, and so somehow my name came up to the board of directors of the company called DSM Pharmaceuticals, a Dutch company.
Yes.
And I took a chance. I left GSK, and I became my first CEO of a division. It wasn't a whole independent company. It was a subsidiary of DSM, big Dutch company. But that was my first opportunity to really prove to myself that I could do it. And after that, your name just gets out, and it's just all about networking. It's all about the people you know.
So in order to get that first slot as a CEO, you actually turned yourself into a very helpful, productive individual that made you attractive to bring to that role, right?
Yeah, but it's not just about me. It's about the people you know. And having gone through the merger of Glaxo Wellcome and SmithKline Beecham, we had 40,000 SKUs, 40,000 products around the world. We moved half of those from site to site, and along the way, I developed a really great network of people. So when DSM hired me to be CEO of their division in North Carolina, I brought with me my team. And my team, I put them around the table and said, we're going to do this together. And we did. Within a year and a half, we got all the issues removed. The FDA was fine. And we put the company back on track. Today, that site is one of the largest, most productive sites within the Thermo Fisher world as a contract manufacturing company.
Interesting. You know, it sounds to me like some of those skill sets that you've built over the years really connected with LabConnect and where you're now taking it, right?
Well, again, it's about the network. So I never thought I'd be in the logistics business, but when I was called in to run a company called Marken, it's a small logistics courier company. 6 years later, we built that into 10 years later, we built that into $1 billion, very, very big company. And along the way, LabConnect was one of my customers. They were one of my customers for 6 years. They were a very small company when we started with them. We did a lot of work for them, and we helped them make them successful. And of course, when LabConnect board decided they wanted to change, my name came up.
Well, that's wonderful.
That's how it works. It's the network. It's the people you know.
It is. Well, we wish you lots of luck at LabConnect.
Thank you.
Many more great days ahead of you.
We're looking forward to it. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Well, everybody, that's another edition of Tomorrow's World Today. Thanks for tuning in.